This is the Cloud Ace podcast, bringing you the latest in cloud security through captivating chats with fascinating cybersecurity experts who are leaving their mark on the industry. Cloud Ace is brought to you by the SANS Institute and hosted by SANS certified instructor Brandon Evans. And now, prepare for departure. We are cleared for takeoff. Here's your captain, Brandon Evans.
Today, we have Lysandra Capella on the podcast. Lysandra currently works for one of the largest financial institutions in the Dutch Caribbean. She has served there in a variety of roles for nearly 13 years, starting out as a programmer. Hey, that seems to be a theme on the podcast. Programmers can be great candidates as cloud security experts. Lysandra is also a SANS GIAC superstar. She has 23 GIAC certifications. I counted 23. 3 of those are cloud related: the GIAC Cloud Security Essentials for SEC 488, the GIAC Public Cloud Security for SEC 510, and the GIAC Security Automation for SEC 540. Outside of GIAC, she also is an AWS certified cloud practitioner, a CISP, and 2 different certifications on cloud from Microsoft she has obtained. In total, her LinkedIn lists 47 licenses and certifications. I'm a lifelong learner too, but wow, just wow. And she has also been an amazing TA for SEC 510, Management 520, and many other courses. Finally, Lysandra is the first person to be named a SANS operational cybersecurity executive, demonstrating her ability to skillfully manage cybersecurity professionals, strategically plan security priorities, and more. With that, welcome, Lysandra.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. So as I ask basically everybody who's on the podcast, what was your first introduction to the cloud and how did it change your role?
So my first introduction, of course, not on the personal side, on the professional side as a business or the organization. I think it happened about 7 years ago. That's when we got approached by actually the HR department, and they had seen this amazing cloud service, and they wanted to see if it was possible to use this in our organization. So they were the first one to actually want to use a cloud service. At that point, there were a lot of unknowns. So you have the data security, you're moving employee data to the cloud, confidentiality. You don't want the system to go down during the payrolls. You also don't want anyone to be able to change those salaries. So it took quite some time to actually get all the stakeholders on board, talking to them and convincing them, making sure that all the controls that we have on premise would still be in place when they would move to the cloud. But that was basically the first cloud service that we implemented in our organization. And from that, I think, if I think about it right now, because HR was the first one, it exposed the employees, but also the organization to cloud services, making them think, hey, for my department, I might be able to use cloud services. And that kind of changed our role in more a partnership with the business, where we would discuss where they would come with us with their challenges. Hey, I also want to use a cloud service. How can I do this in a secure manner? How can I still keep the confidentiality, the availability, the integrity of the data while moving to the cloud? So I and from other people, I think it's about the same way they got exposed to cloud services. One department seeing it and then asking if they can start using it. What about you, Brandon?
Well, I just first and foremost find it really interesting that the first organization was HR. You don't really think of HR as an IT innovator, but that's really interesting. I've really just been exposed to the cloud through development. I learned that, hey, instead of having to run all these different servers for different purposes, I can just outsource my storage solution, my caching solution, my database, etc. So I really more so think of it from a development perspective and less from a user's perspective. But when you say that the HR team wanted to adopt a cloud service, do you mean like a cloud service from one of the big 3 cloud providers? Or are we talking more like a SaaS solution that was cloud operated?
We're talking more about the SaaS solution, and one of them, of course, you always have, and we will talk about that perhaps later. You always have that about you have the IT that's responsible for it right now on premise. You have those headaches, and having that in the cloud, they are able to use a lot more cloud services from a service, a SaaS from a service provider than that they had on premise. So it was really about innovation, being able to do much more in the cloud than they were able to do on premise. And also in the end, having more availability.
Yes. We talk a lot about, yeah, for sure. Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Like you mentioned, we don't want our integrity to be affected where people are getting paid more or less than they should be. All those considerations are very important. And that's an important delineation that you make regarding, platform as a service and infrastructure as a service, which I think is more of what we've really focused on in this podcast. But, SaaS is a big part of this as well. And it's really an amazing thing from a business perspective, because now instead of having to run your own services on-prem, you can just use a managed service. You don't have to have your own internal HR system. You don't need to have your own intranet that you have servers running. You can outsource this to an Atlassian or a Workday or what have you. And I think that... Yeah, go on.
And I think based on what you're saying there about those services, I think from the business perspective, they're able to roll it out much quicker than if they had to wait for the internal because the IT internal is also keeping on the lights, right? So they're doing the operational aspects and they don't really have time to work on innovation. And that's where you have the cloud, which is the actually selling point. Everything goes much quicker.
Absolutely. And we talked about this in the episode with Frank, right? We need to have our focus be on the things that actually make our company money. We want to focus on core competencies. And the vast majority of organizations, their core competency isn't running a data center, isn't running on-prem services. Their core competency is banking or some other actual thing that makes the money. So yes, not only does it allow for a quicker rollout, but it also allows them to focus on what matters to them. But at the same time, I feel like people have a much better understanding, at least in traditional IT, of how to secure services that they manage themselves. And we're getting a lot better with educating people on infrastructure as a service security, as well as platform as a service security. But SaaS security, that's something that I don't think anybody's really solved, because software as a service is all over the place. There's, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of popular applications that people are using in the cloud that we don't even have the details of the underlying architecture that's being used by these providers. So in your role, are you responsible for SaaS as well as IaaS and PaaS, or do you specialize in one area or another?
So it's really, so we are a financial institution. So it's depending on the request of the business, what the business needs, and that kind of request, and you work with whatever they come. So I think I'm very privileged to be able to have a really broad understanding and be able to work on different kind of project and not just focus on one area. And that really makes it a lot more interesting.
Got it. And that's awesome. I can't even imagine learning about all these different SaaS providers and how to lock down those various controls. Like, I'm really glad that I'm not responsible for Workday security. That sounds like something that would drive a lot of people, out of their mind. But, hey, someone's got to do it.
Yeah, it's basically making sure, you have some kind of framework you create based on your organization, you create some kind of framework checklist, and you go through it, make sure for whatever SaaS platform you're using, that you're going through that to make sure that you do have the basic controls. And then you still have to, of course, go into each one of them in more detail to secure them better.
Certainly. And you've worked with or created various types of guidelines for adapting to the cloud or to assess the maturity of your organization. So I want to talk a little bit about one of the courses that you're involved with, Management 520, which is all about creating a cloud roadmap for transforming your business to the cloud. And you've TA'd for that class quite a few times, and you've talked about a lot of the content within that class. And the first step of the cloud roadmap in that class is defining the goals and objectives for moving to the cloud. So you've already mentioned innovation as well as speed is a huge reason why people adopt cloud services. Are there any other drivers that typically organizations cite when they make that transition?
I think innovation is one of them, but another one that we also briefly touched on just now was cost reduction. One of the things people often think when they think about cost is, hey, if I move to the cloud, it's going to reduce my cost. And if you think about COVID, most of companies have done a rapid digital transformation, hoping that if they go digital, they will be reducing their cost even more. And moving to the cloud, they think, okay, if I'm on premise, I need to maintain an application. I need an application administrator. I need a network administrator. I need a system administrator. I might need a DBA. But once I move to the cloud, the only thing I will need will be an application administrator. That would mean that they would have more resources. They would save some money there, but also have more resources available for the innovation driver, which is the other driver we just discussed. Actually, last week I was talking. I don't know if you saw the latest vulnerability for Exchange, which is for the on-premise servers. So this vulnerability is just touching the on-premise Exchange servers, and there were a lot of people that are very diehard saying we're not going to be moving to the cloud. But seeing now that, hey, all the Exchange online services were not impacted, meaning that they need to be ready to patch as soon as Microsoft releases the patch. So that's another motivator for people to start to another driver for people to move to the cloud.
Yeah, so you said a couple things that are really interesting to me. So I completely agree that we can reduce costs by focusing on our core competency instead of hiring a bunch of people to do things that are not going to benefit our bottom line. And I also definitely see the security benefit of using platforms that are going to be automatically patched, because like you said, Exchange Online wasn't affected, whereas on-prem Exchange was. But you mentioned something that was really interesting to me about how we can consolidate a lot of those roles into simply an application administrator. I want to push back a little bit on that. I want to get your opinion about this because, sure, in theory, we could just hire people who are great at administrating and creating applications in the cloud, as well as securing them. And of course, we have hundreds of thousands of unemployed cloud security experts ready to take a job, right? No, there's not that many people that know really how to do that kind of security work. So I'm wondering if, while that sounds great on paper, if people are actually able to hire qualified individuals for those kinds of roles.
I think, and I don't want to refer back to the cloud maturity model, but one of the aspects that you need to look up is also the workforce transformation, making sure that you're able to skill your own people, because it's not just because I'm good in it on-premise networking, I will be good in cloud networking. So that's the part that making sure that you skill your own workforce so that they're able to support what in the cloud also.
Yes, definitely easier said than done. That's part of the reason why SANS Cloud Security exists, because training people on cloud security, it's not as easy as doing your cybersecurity awareness training or even other more technical competencies. It's like a completely different world. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's the same thing as traditional IT security. And it's just radically different.
Exactly. And that's the mindset that needs to change when they're moving to the cloud, to make sure that, hey, it's not just moving to the cloud and we're going to have cost reduction, but we actually need to skill our people also to be able to support this change.
Whether you're just starting on your flight into cloud security or have been in the clouds for years, the SANS Cloud Security Flight Plan will help you find your runway and heading to progress your cloud security career. Broken down by job roles of cloud security analyst, engineer, architect, DevOps professional, and cloud security manager, this job role map helps pinpoint your starting place for training and certification, whether you're at the baseline or flying Mach 3. We are here to support your journey in cloud security. Download your copy at sansurl.com/flightplan.
Yes, and that gets to the next part of the cloud roadmap, which is understanding the current state of IT within your company. So I'm sure that you have experienced that financial organizations often have super modern applications, right? Using the best, most modern practices.
Well, financial organizations often have been existing for more than 100 years. I know the one that I work for is over 100 years. So they have existed for 100 years. That doesn't mean that everything is legacy, but because you need to remember there's still new applications being developed. So those new applications, actually, when they're being developed, those are primary candidates to move to the cloud. And if you think about it, there are also some components that are integrating with the mainframe. That those are also some components that would, once they're out of end of life, that you would be thinking to move to the cloud. I have seen some organizations move the mainframe to the cloud, but that's quite a headache to actually move. So from my perspective, from what I've seen that actually works, it's really breaking it down and refactoring and seeing how you're going to be moving this to the cloud in pieces and not a big bang.
Yes, and it does seem like you basically have to rewrite some of these applications in order to port them. Everybody just loves these catchphrases, just lift and shift. It's just that easy. And really, how much success have you seen with lifting and shifting applications in your experience?
So from what I have heard and seen, not that much. A lot of people who have done the lift and shift have also moved it back afterwards because the cost, didn't take the cost much into account. So after lifting and shifting and having a party saying everything was fine, they finally moved it to the cloud. They actually had to move it back after a few months because of the costs were much more than on premises. So it's something that really needs to be thought out well if it's really benefit for the company, for the goals of the company to move it to the cloud.
Yes, and I imagine that a lot of the people that worked on that initiative probably left shortly after because that was probably a miserable undertaking. And the idea that they then did all of that for nothing, I would not be happy to see all that work going towards, unfortunately, not much of anything. So yeah, it definitely results in a lot of rewriting. And if you're talking about migrating mainframe applications, I don't even know how you'd start with that, honestly. Like integrating with those older applications, yeah, we can write code that is going to run commands on the operating system and offload it using some really hacky bash script. But, migrating that kind of stuff, I mean, people actually do that.
Well, from what, again, we have not done that, meaning I don't have first-hand experience with it, but I do know organizations which have done it, but that's been quite an undertaking. It didn't happen overnight. And it's just putting everybody together in the same room and just all those brains that have been working there for years to be able to get that successfully done.
Y'all are doing some amazing work. I couldn't even imagine working with anything even older than 10 years at this point. I'm so spoiled with all the new technologies I get to play around with. I can't even imagine supporting a business older than me. Like that's wild. But yeah, so you have to establish an understanding of what your current IT is doing in your organization. You also have to have a good understanding of your workforce, like you mentioned, because just because the IT can easily be migrated does not mean people are ready for that migration to happen. But then you get to your next part, which is choosing a framework. So from your experience, what framework do you think listeners that are working for a financial institution should take a look at?
So I don't think there's just one framework. And if you look at the 3 cloud providers, they all have really great, well-written frameworks. So if I might suggest something to the listener, I would suggest to read all 3 of them. And then you might have someone say, I use only AWS. Why would I be reading anything about Google? If you read these frameworks, you will see that there are a lot of cross-functional learning that you can actually apply back into your organization. Although you don't use the Google, you might still find something that you can apply. And these frameworks are really it needs to be customized to your organization. There's not one that says, this is really something that I can just pick and choose and I'm going to be using it for my organization and can be used for the other organization. Each one develops their own roadmap.
Got it. And because the term framework is used in so many different contexts, can you dive deeper into what kind of framework folks would be looking at for this part of the roadmap? And can you give some examples just so that people know what terms to look up?
So we're looking for the cloud adoption framework, which is the one that Google, AWS, and Microsoft both have. The one from Microsoft is much more in detail, that they actually go more in the technical parts also, and all actually with instruction how to do it. So each one has their own benefit. And there are some resources that can help you with which framework to use. One of them is the 520 course. In that class, they go in depth into each one of the three ones and show you what you can use from each one of them. And another one is the cloud security maturity model. That model is basically a mirror that shows you, this is my current state right now, and where do you want to go? So based on whatever that you as a CISO or as an organization decides that you want to go, that's where you're going to be working at and looking for the action item to take.
Awesome. Now, I know you don't want to, nor really can you in this next half an hour, talk about all of the great content in Management 520, but just as a little bit of a teaser, you mentioned that some parts of some frameworks are really useful for other cloud providers. Can you give an example of something that, let's say, Google prescribes that is also useful for AWS that AWS itself does not cover?
I think let me see. I think the if we look at the Google one, it has the more like the stages the current stages that you're currently in. So it really shows that framework of which stage you're in, and you don't have that in the ones that from AWS or neither Microsoft. So if you look at those, you can actually, I'm in this stage, and this is what I should be doing in this stage, and that's something nice that Google has and that the other ones don't.
Very cool. So looking at your maturity and using that as a way of determining what your next steps are in your cloud adoption. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Now let's talk a little bit about that cloud security maturity model that you mentioned earlier. You helped out Jason Lamb with creating a poster, which you can find on sans.org/cloud, that talks about the cloud security maturity model that you all work together on. And some of the things covered on this are the 8 different categories that you've divided basically all of these tasks into. That's infrastructure, architecture and protection, security governance, data protection, security assurance, detection and response, workforce transformation, IAM, and application workload protection. So that's like a bunch of words, lots of domains that a security executive needs to be worried about. How can a CISO realistically manage all those different areas? Is it enough to just hire someone for each area and call it a day?
So that's a valid point, Brandon. So the cloud security maturity model is not really something that any organization can go to a perfect state. It's something that you need to look at for your internal organization and see where are you right now. For example, some people might have a really good identity management in place, so their maturity is at level 3, but their network might be at level 1. So at that point, the CISO might be, guys, looking at this cloud maturity model, I'm right now at level 1 for networking. I would like to be at level 3. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all of them need to be at 5. But you work with the ones that you create a roadmap based on your internal organization. And based on that, you work towards the action items that are also mentioned on the poster to get to that point.
Got it. And is this something that is evaluated by a third party similar to the BSIM, for example? Or is this something that you score internally in terms of what levels that you are at?
There's currently no scoring yet in place. We have just created this poster. So it's right now there's no scoring in place. There are like 5 different levels, but there's no scoring in place yet.
Got it. So that is something that the organization would have to do internally. They'd have to determine what stages they are in. And yeah, that's a very important point that a lot of people get wrong when it comes to these maturity models, is they think, oh, we're not at level 5, therefore we are doing something wrong. And that's just not the right way to think about these maturity models, right? Because what it describes, if I understand correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, is these maturity models describe your current state versus other organizations in terms of activities that you do and other organizations, what activities they do. So just because the average organization does a certain activity does not mean that you should be doing that activity. It just means that that is on average what people do. It may not make sense in your particular context.
That's correct. So not necessarily because, hey, you know something, I'm right now at 3 for identity and I should be at 5. Is that something, are you okay with being at 3? You can just work on the other items. So you don't need to hire, like you said, 8 different people. You can work on the other items.
Yes, a lot of people do want to show that objective progress. I think a lot of people want to get their various maturity model scores up just so that they can tell people, hey, we did it. But it really gets back to that business case. Like, what does the business actually need for you to do? Because getting points for the sake of getting points is not particularly useful. This isn't a video game. This is business.
Yeah.
Yes. Anything else that you'd like to cover with regards to the maturity model that you all have worked on?
I think we covered a lot of it, and we will be covering much more. I think in November we have a webcast planned. So just stay tuned. And if you are interested in the cloud security model, just join us during the webcast.
Awesome. There's one particular topic that I thought was really interesting when I was perusing that document, and that one was related to data classification. Now, in my experience, data classification is outrageously difficult. Probably one of the hardest things to do, at least in an automated fashion. So what can we do to minimize the difficulty associated with data classification?
So I think, and I don't have the complete maturity model right in front of me, but if you look at a maturity model, there are different stages. And I think just by starting with the first stage and looking where your data is actually at, that's basically the first stage. You want to inventorize where your data is at. And from that, you can basically move in stages till you get to, if you want to be in an automated stage, to an automated stage that as soon as some new data is discovered, it gets classified automatically. But the first thing you want to know where your data is at.
Yes, and I think that certainly a very important part of this is just to determine what's production data versus what's non-production data. A lot of people intermingle those two data sets, and that's something that we could get a lot better at avoiding. Knowing also, what is, yeah, go on.
And also for us, for example, as a financial institution, it's also important to classify when you have PCI data, card data, PCI's card data, and that goes to a different classification than when you have normal data on the network. So that also makes a big difference during the classification.
Yes, so separating out your data to different accounts or different infrastructure that is designed to be able to handle that type of data in that classification. All right, so before we wrap up, you've been involved with SANS for quite some time. As I mentioned in the intro, you have countless certifications. I didn't even know there were that many certifications to begin with, and you've taken that many. And you've been involved with TAing and doing other things with SANS. And I just kind of wanted to know how your experience has been working in that environment, how you've enjoyed working with other professionals in the field via SANS events or by doing various things for SANS.
It has been amazing. I'm really grateful for SANS for all the opportunities. It's really amazing working with professionals like you, Brandon. Every time I TA for you, I learn a lot, and every class is different. So every time we're talking and we're interacting with students and with the instructors, and every time you get a different perspective from something, and each week that you TA, you're actually learning something new. Where everybody's learning from each other. So it's not just us helping students, but also students sharing their stories and their experiences. That's also helping us to become better professionals.
Absolutely. And that's a thing that I just keep trying to emphasize at the beginning of every week when I'm teaching, is that this is a two-way conversation. Just because I'm talking about an area that I have a lot of experience in, like public cloud security, does not mean I know it all. And in fact, in many domains, I know the least amount out of the people that are in the room. Like, I've never managed someone, never worked in a SOC, never done any kind of digital forensics. So it is a two-way street. And the best part, in my opinion, about teaching or TAing is getting to learn. Because when you teach something, you learn in the process. And I'd really recommend that anybody who's listening to this, if this is something that they're interested in, to check out our work study program or look into the possibility of being a TA for SANS. Or even if you don't want to go down that route, if you haven't before given a presentation publicly or a webcast or something about a topic that you're passionate about, definitely check that out, because it's a great way of really formalizing your knowledge that you have. Because if you know something, but you can't really explain it in your own words, how well do you really know it? That's something that I question every day. Well, it was awesome talking to you, Lysandra. Where can folks find you online?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. Just Google my name, Lysandra Capella, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Not a Twitter user?
I am on Twitter, but not active.
Yeah, I'm the exact same
So you can
way.
also follow me on Twitter, but not really active.
That's exactly what I say to folks. Like, feel free to, but I post like once a month at most. So yeah, LinkedIn is definitely where I hang around. Well, Lysandra, it was so great having you on the podcast. I cannot wait for you to work with me again on Sec 510. I'm sure that will be in the near future. And I really hope that folks enjoyed our conversation about cloud leadership and building out that cloud security roadmap. And if you want to check out cloud resources that SANS provides, including the roadmap that we just discussed, make sure to go to sans.org/cloud, where you can get all sorts of awesome free resources, posters, cheat sheets, blogs, etc., as well as you can learn about our job roadmap, which tells you how you can map certain courses to different careers that you'd like to take. So thanks a bunch again, Lysandra.
Thank you again, Brandon, for the opportunity.